So, Vaush, you may be familiar with him. He is a libertarian socialist YouTuber who makes much of his content dunking on conservatives and other non-socialists. His primary political aim is implementing libertarian socialism, which he would like to achieve by mandating that all businesses are organized into worker cooperatives and all other forms of business are banned. I'll let him explain it for himself.
When I think about socialism, a bunch of things get conjured in people's heads. Vuvuzela, Stalin, Mao Zedong, Ho Chi Minh. What I'm talking about, very simply, is the democratization of the workplace, the publicization or the deprivatization of firms. Essentially, if you work at a place, you have collective ownership of that place. This is essentially a worker co-op. This isn't some vast theoretical.
Oh, okay. So, I have to say, I'm actually finding myself quite convinced by Vaush. After watching more and more of his videos, and of course drinking quite a bit of soy, I just can't help but find this prospect appealing. Maybe we should ban all other types of businesses. Maybe we should mandate that worker cooperatives are the only legal form of business. After all, isn't it a good thing to give people a stake in the place that they work? Shouldn't they have control over where they spend most of their lives? There is just, one problem with this. Yeah, co-ops sound kinda cool, but is it really realistic to mandate this to be the only form of business? Sure, we have some successful examples today, but is that really proof that is needed for such a radical transformation of society, and that it will work out well? Well, don't worry, because Vaush has us covered on this too.
I understand your meaning completely, and I agree there actually are issues sometimes with scaling up of industry when it comes to worker co-ops, which are democratically owned corporations. Thankfully, I've done research on this subject, and I am happy to inform you that your concerns are unfounded. Worker co-ops are, generally speaking, more resilient, more productive, better to work at, and overall more successful on average than privately owned corporations, in spite of the fact that they have faced substantial systemic discrimination, particularly from loan vendors and from banks here in this country who aren't willing to test the co-op model.
Wow, now, isn't that reassuring? Vaush is basically a regular old St. Paul, because when he speaks, you can be sure it isn't even really him speaking, but the Lord's science, flowing straight from his mouth. You might think that trying to transform the entire economy into a radically different system from what we currently have might be something that you should be pretty cautious about. There, might be countless externalities that can hardly be accounted for in the differences between a few voluntary cooperatives and entire countries being organized based on them. But don't worry, as Vaush says,
I've done research on this subject, and I am happy to inform you that your concerns are unfounded.
so just don't worry about it. Dr. Vaush has done the research. It's done, it's settled. What would be one of the most radical economic transformations in centuries, really ever. He's already concluded that your concerns, they're just unfounded. So I guess I might as well just register with the radical left right now and sort of, change the direction of this whole channel. But before I do that, maybe it would be useful to take a quick look at this amazing research that Vaush has done. The research which he bases such a radical transformation on. Fortunately, what this research is and where it is isn't a mystery. As I do actually unfortunately watch his channel somewhat regularly, he cites his ultimate research document relatively frequently. Link to it in the description, of course. And this is it. Now, you might think that one page, a total of 11 links, might be a bit small for the blueprint for the entire future of the world's economy, but don't worry, I'll go through these, and I'm sure they're all very good. The first group of sources I have here are those labeled in red. They are all either basic definitions, descriptions, or op-eds. Now, they aren't totally useless. That type of media does exist for a reason, and I'm sure they are good at explaining relatively basic concepts relating to cooperatives. But this isn't what we're here for. I'm not here for these sort of baseline explanations. I'm here for the hard science and the research that Vaush has been doing. So this cuts down on about half of the citations thus far, and it might be a bit worrying that 50% of the citations are non-academic basic explanations, but don't worry, I'm sure the other half will make up for it. Now, the second group that I've highlighted, those in blue, are just two citations on the existence of two different Norwegian cooperatives. Again, not exactly an academic source, but they do prove, I suppose, that cooperatives exist, which I guess is something. It also is important to note that the members listed here are people that have paid memberships to these cooperatives, not employees. The total employees of these two companies total at about 5,000. But hey, I guess it does prove that these businesses can function, which I guess is something. Okay, so those first seven might not be very interesting, but don't worry, there's still four left, those in orange. And don't worry, these are the real meat. This is the real research that Vaush was telling us so much about. The first one that I'll go over is from a website called Co-op Law, which I'm sure is a very unbiased source. It's mostly just going through a couple studies on worker cooperatives, all of which show that as new businesses, they have similar or superior success rates to traditional businesses. Now, that is of course impressive, and of course very scientific. However, there is one slight problem I have with this study. Pretty much all of the study links are broken, so that kinda sucks, but that's not the issue. I was able to find archives of some of them. For example, this one study from British Columbia, which certainly does show what they claim, that co-ops have higher success rates than traditional businesses in that province. However, the thing which I do find a bit concerning is, as it even says right on the co-op law page, there were, from 2000 to 2010, 150 co-ops established in that province. That is, of course, 15 a year on average. Now, I don't know, just when I read that number, 15 a year, seems kind of small to me. In a province of about 4 million people, that is. I wasn't able to find similar numbers for traditional businesses during that specific period, but I was able to find more recent numbers from BC, which show that there are about 2,300 new businesses created yearly. Now, I don't know. I'm certainly no economist, but I'm pretty sure Vaush isn't one either, so I guess we're even there. But somehow, it just doesn't seem like a particularly honest comparison. 15 compared to 2,300? I don't know. But Vaush did, of course, promise that co-ops don't have problems scaling up. But the science, it feels a little bit lacking. Do you remember the vigor with which Vaush said that he had done the research and that our concerns are unfounded? I was going to go through each one of these studies individually, but honestly, I don't think there's that much of a point. They all pretty much show the same thing. With similarly tiny sample sizes, co-ops tend to do alright, or, maybe even better than alright. Maybe they tend to outperform traditional businesses. And who knows? Maybe they will perform just as well in a world where they are the only legal option. Maybe they'll scale up without any problems whatsoever. And there is, of course, the much-cited Mondragon Corporation in Spain, which is the country's seventh largest employer. Which sounds pretty impressive, and it is, though it is slightly less impressive when you realize that it makes up less than 0.3% of Spain's total workforce, the vast majority of the rest of that 99.7% being either government workers or employees in traditional capitalist firms. Though, apparently socialists don't like Mondragon anymore, evidently because it's slipping back into capitalism, despite its glorious workplace democracy. Or at least that is what another one of Vauch's citations say, from the International Socialist Review, I'm sure a very rigorous publication. Okay. But, what's the point with this whole video? Why did I make this? I'm not even really challenging any of Vauch's facts. I'm sure those studies are all more or less true, though it also should be pretty obvious that 4 semi-academic links isn't some sort of great objective proof that co-ops are some amazing system that we should base our entire society around. But that isn't even really my main point. My main point is that Vaush gets off on portraying himself as just being so smart.
I've done research.
He's done research. He has all the studies. A full 4 studies worth of research, that is, of course. Add another 2, and you might have enough for an undergrad paper. But the real issue isn't that I'd expect a 3-year BA student to do more actual research. The real issue is that this is all based on a lie. Vaush isn't a libertarian socialist because of some studies that he read. He didn't read these studies and then suddenly realize that worker cooperatives are just so awesome. This is a fundamental leftist lie, especially a Marxist lie, but certainly a lie that has become popularized among many different factions within the left. This is that big brain scientific socialism that you hear so much about, and it's just not true. Politics is first and foremost an art, not a science. Politics is about principles and morals and ethics. It's not about having the best studies. That doesn't mean that studies and science aren't relevant to governance, but no one, not Vaush, not anyone else really, has arrived at their politics because of some big brain study they read. Maybe there are a few people. Destiny is probably the best embodiment of that. But fundamentally, politics is about what your conception of the common good is. It isn't about having the most big brain study. But the left, the secularists especially, are simply incapable of having a real moral discussion anymore. So they have to hide and pretend that it's all just science, man. Thank you everyone very much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, and most importantly, please do share this video with anyone who you think might find it interesting. Also, Charlemagne the Distributist and me will probably be doing a live stream later on this week. The time isn't decided yet, but the topic will be a critique of nationalism from the right. Also, one last thing, as I mentioned last video, I've launched a Discord server recently. It's not very big yet, but if you're interested in that, feel free to join.